The numbers are staggering, a spike in violent crimes in several major American cities. And the big question is, why is this happening? What is driving this? CNN's Miguel Marquez reports.
Protest and rioting in Baltimore and Ferguson. Anti-police demonstrations from New York to California. And now worrying indications, violent and deadly crime in some places on the rise. In New York, a brazen scene. Police now seeking this man who fired off several rounds in Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood. A 50-year-old man shot twice but survived. And one of the nation's latest murders this weekend, a 23-year-old from the Bronx in New York.
And so the brother on the floor with the big hole in where his heart should have been, just pumping blood.
Police grappling with increased crime, worse in places like Baltimore that has seen so much protest and violence in recent weeks. The month of May in Baltimore, the deadliest in 40 years. In Houston, murders up 45% year to year. In Chicago, where total crime is down, murders and shootings up. In New York, where crime overall is also down, murders up nearly 20%. In Milwaukee, says the Wall Street Journal, murders up a staggering 180% this year. The paper also says in Los Angeles, crime is down, but in the South Central precinct, shootings up 100%. And in St. Louis, next door to Ferguson, Missouri, the Post-Dispatch reports 70 homicides this year. That's up more than 30%. Peter Moskos is a former Baltimore cop and current professor of policing.
If there's a national mood that starts to see police as the bad guys, the police as the enemy responsible for these problems, it makes it a hell of a lot harder to police. One way that cops deal with that is they stop policing those people.
One example, New York City has sharply limited the controversial police tactic of stop and frisk. At its height in 2011, nearly 700,000, mostly black and Latinos, stopped and searched. So far this year, just over 11,000 total. But gun crimes in New York now up. Are increases in gun crimes tied to a sharp decrease in stop and frisk?
It's entirely possible that stopping hundreds of thousands of people, which has moral and constitutional legal questions, but it's quite possible that it has a strong deterrent effect on people carrying guns. If we give that up and people start dying again, then we have to come up with a plan B.
Miguel Marquez, CNN, New York.
Let's talk about this. I'm joined now by Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark and also retired Los Angeles Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Thank you both for being here. And Sheriff Clark, let me begin with you. You heard it in Miguel's piece. Violent crime is on the rise in a number of big U.S. cities. Your city, Milwaukee, murders up 180% from a year ago. Some critics say, as you just heard in the piece, the police are afraid to do their job in some cases. Do you buy that?
Not at all. You know, the police are damned if they do, damned if they don't. It's always the fault of the police. In the city of Milwaukee, it's the manifestation of this failed social engineering experiment that's masqueraded itself as sentencing reform, prison reform, criminal justice reform. I've been predicting this for years, where a revolving door has been created on the justice system where the police arrest career criminals, violent career criminals, get them into the system, and the system spits them back out into these depressed areas, into these struggling areas to reoffend and commit more crime. You couple that with the fact that there's less assertive, less self-initiated proactive policing because of the constant bashing, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing today.
So we had the Milwaukee DA, who I know leads that program you just criticized. I know that you two do not agree on what the right way is to handle the criminal justice system in Milwaukee. We had him on the program talking about that program last week. Cheryl, to you were a detective in LA, right? Shootings are up 100% in LA from a year ago. What do you attribute that to in Los Angeles?
Well, you know, I don't know what the cause and effect is, but what I will tell you is that if the inference is that crime is up because officers are not doing their job, then I have no patience for that kind of activity. Because understand that people who choose to be police officers are not plucked from obscurity and placed in those positions. And so what is going on is inherent. Officers take that position knowingly and well informed about the problems that are facing you as an officer day to day. And so you don't get to not do your job. And if you're found not doing that, then you should be removed.
And Sheriff Clark says, look, that is not the case whatsoever. Let me ask you this, Sheriff Clark, because so much of the discussion around policing America's cities in the last year has come down to race. Right or wrong, it has been the focus point of the discussions. And unlike in Ferguson, where the police department was mostly white, policing a mostly black community, you've got a lot of big cities where the police departments are very reflective of the communities. Baltimore, Cleveland, New York, for example. Do you think, Sheriff Clark, that matters? Does it matter that the race of the officers reflects the race of the community?
Well, you know, that's a desirable goal, but I don't think that's what's at play here. I think we focus too much on race. Let's look at the pathologies that exist in many of these urban cities with the concentrated poverty, people can't find meaningful work, failing schools, father-absent homes, and I'm not saying those cause crime, but those conditions lead to the rise of the underclass. And what we're seeing in these areas are underclass behaviors. So we can continue to focus on the police if we want, but transforming the police is not going to remove those pathologies that exist in those areas.
What do you mean
therefore
underclass behavior? What do you mean, just for our viewers, underclass behavior?
Underclass behavior, things like having kids out of wedlock, failure to stay consistently in the workforce, crime drug and alcohol abuse, criminal involvement, father-absent homes. Those are some of the behaviors that black subculture behavior in many of these American ghettos that I'm talking about. Those are underclass behaviors. Those things are on the rise because the underclass is growing in these American ghettos.
Cheryl, is that a fair assessment, do you believe? Talking about having children out of wedlock, is it fair to make that correlation in your opinion?
It has nothing to do with anything, in my opinion. What I believe the problem is, and I'll take race out of the equation as well, because what we're seeing are police officers who are not being held accountable for the actions that they take. They're drunk with power. Police departments circle the wagon, and they shield these officers from any liability. I promise you, if police officers who are errant and who are taking the lives of people inappropriately are held financially responsible, personally responsible, this stuff will stop yesterday.
Final word, Sheriff Clark?
Well, you know, we can continue to blame the police if we want. You want to throw out some anecdotal references. I want to see the evidence to support the claims that the police aren't doing their jobs, that the police are out there committing crimes and engaged in racist practices. Show me the research and the data to suggest that, and we can have that discussion. We can continue to come down on the American police officer if we want, but I'm not going to allow that to happen, because if we don't go into these communities, and I'm push back against this notion that the American police officer has quit on their cities. That is not the case. Not the police officers I know. If it weren't for the American police officer, who else is going to go down into these areas, into these untenable situations, these impossible situations, to protect the lives of everybody, including black people? So, you know, we can continue to harp on the American police officer we want. That is not the problem in the American ghetto. It is failed liberal urban policies.
Certainly a lot more to debate here, guys. We'll have you back on soon. Thank you very much. Sheriff David Clark, Cheryl Dorsey, appreciate it. Switching gears here, you will remember